bum 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 ba-da-da-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-ba-dum rum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-da-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-ba-dum. Hello, my friends. Hello. I hope you can hear me all right. I'm not at home. We're on a road trip. I'm in Philadelphia today. It's really great to see all of you. Happy Monday from Oklahoma, says Angela. And Fiona says, hi, Joette from Ontario, and howdy from Texas. It's Authentic Health. Hi, Elizabeth Cole. It's wonderful to see you all, my friends. It's Monday night. And Monday night, we do one thing and one thing only, and that is we go over homeopathy. I teach you what I know, and I share with you. And I hope that you kind of help each other as well. My name is Joette Calabrese, and this is what we do on Monday nights, for those of you who don't know me. But for those who do know me, hi, friends. Great to see you. Hi, Harry. Hi, Robin. So great to see everyone. Yep, it's good. It's very good. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about labor and delivery. But to open it up, I want to explain something to you that will help you understand, perhaps on a deeper level, how to think homeopathy through before you decide to use a medicine or before you even decide to move forward to learn more. Do you know, my friends, that there are organ-specific medicines? Some of you know, some of you may not know. Some of you may not know what I mean, what I'm even talking about. Well, what I mean is that for the organs in the body, for each of the organs, pretty much each of the organs, I guess I could say all of the organs of the body, there are specific medicines that we know are associated with those organs, meaning those are the medicines that we most often use for the conditions that arise around those organs. So, for example, the lungs, one of the great organs, one of the great remedies for the lungs is calicarb, but so is lachesis. And so let's think of another one. How about the liver? One of the great remedies for associated with the liver is chelidonium. We could keep doing this. With the skin, it's sulfur or antimonium crude. You see where I'm going with this? So even if you have no association with labor and delivery, I want you to know that there are specific organs for specific parts of the body, and especially during specific times of a human's life. So, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. Labor and delivery are no different, because labor and delivery are pretty much all about the uterus, the birth canal, of course, the perineum, and of course afterwards we'd be talking about the breasts, and also the disposition of the mom, and of course the wellness of the baby. But let's start with the uterus, because that is where labor resides, right? It's all in the uterus. So when I go to my repertory, I'm going to Robin Murphy's 4th edition of the Meta Repertory. And for those of you who are my students, or even if you're not a student, and if you're not a student, my friend, you should consider becoming one, because it really is fun. Right, students, friends of mine? It's so great being together, because we're together frequently. And I teach, and you ask questions, and we all grow together, closer and closer. So what I'm doing is I'm going to the female section. I go to the beginning of the table of contents, look under female, and then I go to childbirth. And I'm on page 872. And when I look at childbirth after, complaints after childbirth, there are a lot of medicines. But if you look there, you will see the same medicines there as you will further on in the next couple of pages for everything pretty much to do with labor and delivery. And so the most important medicines there are belladonna, Bellus perennis, caulifilum. Remember that one, friends? That's one of our great childbirthing medicines. Leading up to labor, as well as during childbirth, and even afterwards. Chamomilla, calicarb, the lungs too. So now you see 2 actions of calicarb, the lungs, as well as the complaints after childbirth. Pulsatilla, almost always pulsatilla. Pulsatilla is such a uniquely feminine remedy. Rhus tox, sabina, also a uniquely feminine remedy. Sikeli core, and sepia. So, my friends, isn't it fascinating when we look at complaints after childbirth? We've got some very specific medicines. Now, if we go down further, you don't have to have this book to be able to do this with me, but for those who are following me, further down, it's the second last rubric from the bottom on the left on page 872. To speed up recovery. To speed up recovery. We have the main remedies. Look, there are a lot more remedies than what I just said to you, what I just read to you. But my friends, remember, we're looking for, generally speaking, the bold medicines that are capped, bold, and underlined are the most important. It doesn't mean we ignore the others. No, no. Oh, nay, nay. Does not mean that. It means we consider those that are most emboldened, most likely to be useful, especially at the start of our treatment of someone. So, all right, so now we have childbirth. To speed up recovery, we've got arnica, Bellus perennis, calendula, and there's, okay, after slow recoveries, arnica, Bellus perennis, sepia, graphites. These are to recover from the actual childbirth itself. Why would we be looking at these medicines? Why would we be looking at calendula or arnica, right? I mean, Bellus perennis. Those are all injury remedies. So not only are we going to be using this for after the birth, especially if there is a slow to recover, we're going to make a certain assumption that this has to do with recovery. The recovery is especially if the mother was given the pit. I'm hoping that she doesn't do that. It's a very unsavory time in a woman's life. And my old friend, my doctor who helped me, who accompanied my home births, Dr. Mary Catalano, believed very strongly that Pitocin, the pit, that is the IV that forces the contractions harder and much more unnaturally than anyone could possibly imagine. It's extremely painful. Is not childbirth kind of painful in and of itself? No, no, no. Take the pit and you'll never want another child. But what happens with Pitocin is it gets the baby's head, and the baby's head is hitting hard because the contractions are so violent. And it's hitting hard. And the baby's head is hitting hard, or maybe it's a shoulder. More often than likely it's the head. That's not so good for the woman's uterus, the os, the whole area, perineum, the whole area, the birth canal. But it's also not good for the baby's head. What do you think? Should a baby's head be hitting hard against a uterus? I don't think so. Or a pelvic bone? No. But for the mother, we're still talking about the mother here. We're not talking about the baby at this moment in time. That's why we would use arnica for injuries from the birth. That's why we would use Bellus perennis. And arnica montana and Bellus perennis are very closely linked, friends. Bellus perennis is daisy, and arnica is the mountain daisy. And so I want you to remember those two are very closely connected. We usually think of arnica first, but my friends, it could easily be Bellus perennis as well. And then calendula is for injuries, is it not? So those are great medicines for recovery, to speed up the recovery. And so I used arnica for my births, and my first labor was very long. But once I had the baby, I felt magnificent. It was just beyond comprehension how great I felt. Like within minutes, not days later. No, within minutes. We went right home. That was a hospital birth. The following births were not. They were home births. But that one was a hospital birth, and I went right home within, I don't know, I think it was half an hour, something like that. And I went right home, and I did laundry, and I made a meal for my family. I couldn't be kept down. I had so much great energy. I felt so exhilarated. And I think a big part of it was the fact that I was using arnica. Now, I was much younger than my following births, of course, but I was 35 at that time. I wasn't a young mother. That's not young. That's getting to the point where it's a little bit on the older side. Okay, now let's go to another rubric here. Retention of the afterbirth. Now, I've told this story before, and I don't know if I've told it on Monday Night Live, but I'm going to repeat it now anyway because it's such a fascinating story. One day, I was in my office, and the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and on the other side, the voice said, "Joette, you've got to get over here right away." And I said, well, okay, but who is this? And it was someone that I knew pretty well. She was a midwife, and she attended many home births. She said, "This woman has given birth. It was hours ago. The afterbirth the placenta has not birthed." And she was a wreck about it. "You've got to come over right away. Bring a homeopathic kit. Do whatever you got to do. You got to help me with this." So I grabbed my kit, and I gave just my regular 100 remedies in a kit, or maybe it was only 29 remedies, and it was just a small kit. And I zoomed over, and I knew exactly which medicine to consider. My first thought was that it was the placenta was not being birthed, excuse me. But the mother was as stubborn as can be. The midwife was a near wreck. She had already used Pitocin. The injection of Pitocin mattered not. That afterbirth was not presenting. And the mother was laying on the floor in the kitchen because she wanted to stay cool, and the floor was tile. The dad was holding the baby, and the mother was eating ice cream, laying down. And without any concern at all. This mother had no concern, and the midwife said, "Please, if you don't deliver the afterbirth within a certain amount of time, we have to go to the hospital. There is a concern for infection." And the mother said, "I'll die here. I am not going to a hospital." So apparently she had had some experiences in that field. So I am not allowed to administer homeopathic medicine to someone. I'm not a licensed doctor. I'm not a nurse practitioner. But I handed the remedy to the midwife and said, if you want this to use this, here it is for your use. And I handed it to her, and it was coliphylum. And I looked up at the clock that was above the mom's head, and within minutes, my friends, not 40 minutes, not 20 minutes, I don't recall, it was so long ago, I'm going to say it could have been maybe 4 minutes. Within that amount of time, delivered the afterbirth. The placenta was perfectly clean. Everything was great. And the mother said, "See, I don't have to go to the hospital." Meanwhile, I was administering remedies to the midwife because she was so worried about this mother and about, the whole situation, because it was hours. Coliphylum, my friends. Never be without that remedy. It doesn't matter if you're not birthing in your life at this time, or your friends are not birthing and you're much older, or whatever the reason is. What if there's a neighbor down the street and there's a dog that's giving birth? Wouldn't you want to help that dog? Or a cow, and perhaps you're buying milk from a farmer and the cow is having difficulty. Coliphylum, C-A-U-L, coliphylum, O-P-H-Y-L-I-M, I think, L-U-M. Coliphylum, just the way it sounds, but I didn't, even when I pronounced it out, I didn't get the spelling correct. But coliphylum, C-A-U-L, is all you really need to know. That is one of our best medicines for the retention of the afterbirth, but it's also for an ineffective labor. So the uterus is not acting as it should. So, and that's exactly what a retained placenta is all about, is that it's ineffective. Now, how long should we wait? That you leave that up to the midwife to see how long one should wait. But if they're starting to consider the fact that this is ineffective or something is going wrong, then by all means you are going to consider using coliphylum. And what potency would I use? I would use a 200 in a dire case. In a not so dire case, I might use a 30. So for that woman, the first remedy I plucked out of my remedy kit was from a 200 kit, and I plucked it out, handed it to the midwife, and it was a 200 potency. Now this is interesting. if you look at page 873, if you happen to have the repertory that I'm addressing, or that I'm looking at right now, on the left side of the page, about 4 rubrics down, it says contractions causing pain in the small of the back. Isn't that interesting? There's only one medicine, coffea. I want you to remember, my friends, that coffea, C-O-F-F-E-A, coffea, generally in a 200C, is a fabulous medicine for pain, for extreme pain. And particularly during labor, it's the back pain that is the most noteworthy to encourage us to use this medicine, coffea, 200C. Now, could we use others? We could use arnica, we could use gelsemium, we could use all kinds of other medicines, but why not choose the one medicine? There's only one medicine listed in this rubric, coffea. And if you happen to have this book, this repertory, and you go to the clinical section and you look under pain, extraordinary pain, you're going to find coffea is one of our best medicines. So they say, I've never had back labor, but they say back labor is the most noteworthy, the most painful. Okay, I'm going to look at what we've got here. My friend was tricked into pit induction on the due date. That failed and did nothing to move the baby down after hours of torture. Surgical birth, of course. She was told it was just like natural birth. Oh, no, it isn't. Her baby needed another week, and they just would not let her wait for labor to start on its own. Yes, my friends, we are not tricked if we plan in advance. I would never slap that mom on the back of the hand for this, but we must be prepared. You must know what you're getting into. You must know what the rules and the regulations are of a hospital if you're going to have a hospital birth. I know someone who just had twins. The cords became disconnected from the placenta, and they ended up rushing her to the hospital. Would this have helped her? No, I don't think so. Now, coliphylum, at that moment in time, I don't believe that necessarily would have helped. Leading up to it, a lot of times we use coliphylum leading up to the birth, so maybe a 30 in the last few weeks of the pregnancy. We then use coliphylum. And for one of my births, I used coliphylum 6X every day for the last 2 months. I just lost my page. So that is, and so that also helps the placenta remain more intact. Calicarb helped me with back pain and labor too. Yes, thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating. Yeah, because calicarb is one of our great medicines for birthing. Let's see what else we've got here. Pulsatilla. Now, how about when the baby is presenting breech, or is just not presenting properly? It's not head down. Now what do? There are 2 medicines, and I've used one of them, I think 3 times. I've attended home births. I think it was 3 times that we needed it, and the remedy was Pulsatilla. Pulsatilla, Pulsatilla 200C, and it turns the baby. When would someone use something like this? Oh, maybe a week before, 10 days before the approximate imminent date would be a good time. Having said this, the Banerjees, Prateep Banerjee told me that they use lycopodium instead, lycopodium 200C, for a birth that's not presenting properly, for the babies that's not presenting properly. Either one, I believe, would be very useful. But if you're interested, I have a course titled Feminopathy. You go to Joette's Learning Center and scroll down to Feminopathy, and it's all about female conditions. And in there, I discuss not only the fact that these medicines are useful at the end of the pregnancy, during and before labor, but all the way from the very beginning of pregnancy all the way through, we should be using homeopathic medicines to protect the mother and the baby all along. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. See some other questions. Yeah, we don't want to be tricked into anything. And the way you get tricked into something is if you don't know what they're thinking. And you also want to be able to, you want to be assured that you're using the right doctor or midwife. you want to hear a lot of good things about this doctor or midwife. If you want a natural birth, you want a doctor who's got a reputation, or a midwife's got a reputation for ensuring that that's exactly what you get. So you've got to do a lot of work. Let's see what else we've got here. Yes, thank you, Lisa. Coliphylum 200C for dire cases, 30C for less intense. I guess I would put it that way. I would say more coliphylum in advance during the pregnancy leading into the birth. So it's almost prophylactic of sorts. And I don't use a lot of prophylactics in homeopathy, but they do exist. And this is one of those times. Let's see what else we've got here. Wish I would have known about pulsatilla with my fourth. I did acupuncture then, and it was, I'm having a hard time reading this, and it was terrifying. It worked, but still, needles, yikes. Yeah, it's really, it's homeopathy is so simple. You just put the little pills in your mouth. Another part of this that I lost my page, and I'm not going to try to find it now, but I am going to say this, that one of the main things that I want you to remember when we talk about not only organ specific, but also condition, not even the disease or the condition itself, but the thinking of the person. When someone is frightened and they're having a panic attack, we automatically think of aconitum. They might have a fear of death. They might feel as though they're going to have a heart attack. They might feel as though they have, they're doomed, or the baby is doomed. And during the delivery, or even before the delivery, if the mother is starting to feel that way, I want you to always be thinking of aconitum. It's one of our best medicines for when the mother feels as though something dangerous is happening. And it's easy for us to get caught up in that and think that because she's sensing that, it must mean that it actually is happening. But that's not necessarily so. It could simply be a representation of what the mother is experiencing psychologically. A dose of aconitum 200 can do a lot of good work. Oh, Leslie says, in 38 weeks, pulsatilla just turned my baby. Beautiful. Nicely done, Leslie. Good thinking. Yeah, otherwise you might end up with a breech. And if it's a breech, then it's usually C-section on its way. We want to do everything we can to avoid surgery for the sake of the mother and the baby, and for long term. Yeah, the mother has fear of pain. That fear of pain can be, if it's more panicky, I think of aconitum. If it's more fear of forthcoming pain, I think of gelsemium. Gelsemium is for courage. It's for helping people who are about to go through an ordeal, and they're worried that the ordeal is only going to get worse. But also, another part of that as well is to prepare in advance. Read and read and read. Read about natural births, read about home births, watch home births, watch births at animal births. Watch animals giving birth on YouTube. It's a beautiful thing to behold. They're not in stirrups, they're not given drugs, it's just perfectly natural, and they just do it. And sometimes it's many babies. I just watched a pig giving birth to 11 piglets just the other night, just for the fun of it. Okay, Heinrich's homeopathy. If the first birth was traumatic, the mother can have a lot of fear for the next one. Aconite is amazing to help that mama calm down and enjoy the pregnancy. Yes, enjoy the pregnancy, because pregnancy is a very enjoyable thing. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, wow, I love Gelsemium 200, says Elizabeth. Yeah, it's a great medicine. It was given to the soldiers during the Civil War, the American Civil War, when they knew they were going to be going off into death the next day, and they were frightened. They had gut problems as a result of it. And the doctors in those days, in the 1800s, late 1850s, were often homeopathic medical doctors. And so they were on the front lines with these men and distributing gelsemium. It's an awful thing to think of, isn't it? but it'll help you remember that that's the medicine that we use. So even if you will never have another baby, or you don't know anyone who's going to have a baby, I want you to realize that when we pull these medicines together, we can see them being used over and over and over again. I want you also to remember that for the cramping at the beginning of labor, I often use mag fas in hot water. I often call it mug fas. This is not a mug, but a glass of water. You might use about this much water, maybe a little bit less, a few ounces of water in warm water. Put the 5 pills of mag fas, magnesium phosphoricum, in the water. Stir it once, and I call it mug fas because it's nice to have it in a mug, and then you take a sip. And then during labor, after a few minutes, you might take another sip. And then in a few minutes, you might take another sip. And it's magnesium phosphoricum. It calms everything down. It doesn't calm down the labor. We don't want the labor to calm down. We want the labor to rev up. But we don't want the pain to be so excruciating, and we want the mom to feel more in control. And that can do a lot of good for that. Okay, in a few minutes, we're going to go over to my mighties, and I will answer questions tonight. And let's see what else we've got. My niece just delivered her second baby, healthy, but in her home. Yeah, great, in her home. She delivered her son in the hospital and became fatigued by saying no to the I can't read. Oh, Pitocin, no to the hepatitis B for the baby, etc. Yeah, you just go home. I thought you go home. It's your decision. It really is your decision. Now, there are laws now, depending on what state you're in, that might preclude that, but it might be a good idea to seriously think about your next baby or your first baby being delivered at home. It's the place where the least amount of problems occur. And most people think in terms of, oh, gee, I don't want to do that. I want to know that there's a doctor nearby. Yes, but I'm not saying we would never consider using medical care, conventional medical care. But the problem is that if the medical care is available, the medical care will be used. So if they're going to, if it's available to them to use Pitocin, they're going to use it. If they're going to use if a fetal heart monitor is available, they're going to use it. And once you start using one method, the next one snowballs, and the next, and then that's how it is so likely that once you decide to choose a a hospital birth, you are at the mercy of someone else. You're at the mercy of the rules of the hospital, of the industry, of the insurance companies, of everyone except who's really important, and that is your baby. Number one is the baby. Number two is you. It's the way I see it. So with that, my friends, we're going to switch over quickly and go to my mighties. Can we do that, Perry?